Hi, welcome to another episode of Nerd Supernova. I am your host, Paul Michaels, and my special co-host today is Bobby Genero. I got it right. I got
it right this time. Yeah.
All right, good. It's that weird. It's the weird French thing.
That's right.
I've got that too with Michaels or Mitchells, but it's Michaels. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about It, the new movie that just came out a little while ago. I've been a big fan of that story for a long time. I loved the old miniseries. And I've read the book I'd say about a decade ago at least. It's been a long time. I definitely did not want to try and reread it again before the movie. I don't have that in me.
It's too long a book. It's 1,400 pages.
It's a great book. But you both in the miniseries and this movie, and I assume the chapter 2, you're only going to see just essentially the kids and the clown. But in the book, it goes into everything, like everything dealing with the clown and Derry and why Derry is so fucked up, essentially.
Right. I mean, we got cool little Easter eggs in
and
the
hints,
movie that showed, that touched on things for fans of the book.
Yeah.
Where you could, see like, hey, there's the I can't think of the gang, the Bradley Gang. You saw a little something about the Bradley Gang shootout.
There was the Paul Bunyan.
The Paul Bunyan
monument
in the background. So there were like little, Easter eggs hidden throughout that kind of hinted at. Things that we love from the book.
It might come up because doesn't the Paul Bunyan figure attack Richie when he's older?
When he's an adult.
Yeah, so that might come back. Yeah.
Yeah, that might have just been hidden in plain sight of what's to come.
Yeah, that'd be great. I hope that's what they do. All right, Bobby. So we'll start with you because you're much older than I am, and no, just because the book came out originally in 1986. I didn't read it, I think, until I was probably 16, which was oh geez, going back here, so about 13 years ago or so. So, so obviously a much different more time, but you read it essentially just a little while after it came out.
Right. So I am a little older than you. I'm 47. So I started college in 1987. A book was released in 1986. So the second half of my freshman year, 1988, it was Easter break, and I was alone in the dorms. I went to school in Cincinnati, and so I wasn't going to fly all the way home to Boston for a weekend. So I was essentially in the dorms by myself reading this book, and it's the first book and the only one that's ever given me nightmares.
Yeah.
It was an intense book. I remember reading it for the first time, real intense. I read it a second time, same thing about a decade ago. There was a time where stuff that I had read early on in my life, I wanted to kind of go back and revisit, as I'd gotten a little older and see if it still held up or see if I reacted to it a little differently now that I was a little older. And I remember reading it the second time and just loving it just as much as the first time. I, too, was a big fan of the miniseries in 1990.
Yeah.
And, this movie I was really, really looking forward to. I think one thing that we had to get used to, I think you'll agree with me, is, in the book and in the miniseries, they went back and forth between adults and kids.
Oh, yeah,
It happened kind of, it was a back and forth narrative, whereas this one's straight kids throughout.
Yeah.
Kind of covers their whole arc. And then in the next movie, it looks like we're going to see them as adults. There may be some flashbacks.
Oh yeah. They've already confirmed that they're gonna use flashbacks, which is fine. I think it's pretty much it's this far away from getting confirmed, actually greenlit. Everyone already wants it. It's done huge box office for a R-rated horror movie, like unheard of in a long time.
So it's the highest September opening.
Yeah, I think it might be the highest opening for an R-rated movie in since Deadpool.
Deadpool is the only one that is that outclassed it, but
essentially.
But for a September horror movie, it's blown all the records away.
Yeah, and people were just really happy that a lot of it essentially was a pretty well made adaptation of the book. I have some nitpicks, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, and we were saying I love the miniseries. You love the miniseries, but even way back when I heard about the movie happening, granted I heard different reports. I thought originally what they were going to do is they were going to make it essentially another miniseries for TV or something. And I was like, oh, if they do that, I hope they do it on HBO so they're able to use the R rating.
Right.
Then I thought it was going to be a sci-fi original movie. I was like, oh, they're gonna mess it up and stuff like that, or just they're not going to be able to do, because again, the first miniseries it's fun, but it's a PG version of the book. It's not. Yeah.
Right. And you know, the one thing about the '90s miniseries though is you have that iconic performance
by Tim Curry. Yeah.
And I was really, really happy with this kid, Bill
Bill Skarsgård.
Skarsgård.
He's like the kid brother to like the other actor who played
Skarsgård.
Yeah, who played like Tarzan and the dad who is
been in the Thor movies.
Yeah, the Thor movies and Good Will Hunting and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he really made that character his own.
He did.
I really enjoyed his take on it. Because it was kind of like, yes, there's no way I'm going to out iconic Tim Curry.
Yeah.
And so he just kind of embraced it in his own way, and I thought he did a fantastic job with it.
Well, the thing I liked is that they're both very over the top performances, and they're both very chilling in their own unique way. A lot of people are comparing it to like Jack Nicholson Joker and Heath Ledger Joker. I mean, I can kind of agree with that, but it's definitely its own different thing. But yeah, that's the best way. I guess that's the best comparison to do it.
Yeah, I think that's the best comparison right there.
Yeah.
Is, to Jack, because just the fact that Jack was such an iconic performance.
Yeah.
And Heath Ledger, stepped in and made people kind of almost forget about that. He
did a darker, grimmer thing, but
Right.
still very much. It's kind of the idea. It's a darker, grimmer, like taken like or like what the character is meant to be, but it's still essentially Pennywise. It's not. It's not.
Right. And
being
we've
something.
seen like iconic things like this fail miserably.
Oh yeah.
Like Robin Englund's Freddy Krueger, and then when Jackie Earle Haley did it.
Who's a great actor.
Yes, he's great.
Yeah.
He was fantastic as Rorschach in Watchmen. I was just watching that the other night and remembering how good he was. But man, he just did not capture Freddy.
But again, I don't also blame him on that one either. I think again the producers and the director, they went in with a different intention than what they should have done.
They wanted to move away from that, and but it almost maybe they handcuffed him, maybe they didn't allow him to make that role his own. But
yeah, so there's the thing is like Skarsgård's version is definitely closer to the book and stuff like that. They definitely embraced a lot more of the supernatural aspect.
Mm-hmm.
People were a buddy of mine complained about the CGI, but I was okay with it because the way that Pennywise exists, or at least this is spoilers, and I'm going to go spoilers into the book as well. So if you don't want to know anything about Chapter 2, like leave now at this point, I guess. But the idea that like if you know the book and you know the miniseries, you know that he's not of this earth. He's an alien. Right. He's from
the Macroverse.
Yeah, but he essentially exists and does not exist on our plane of existence as Pennywise and or as it even. So there's a scene like where Eddie sees the leper, right, and he's running away, and it's a pretty good scene overall.
Right.
But then they go back to Pennywise. And I remember, maybe it's the way it was on my screen, but the way when they go back to him, Pennywise looks like he's there and he's not there at the same time. And you think almost kind of like a green screen, but it's like, no, I like that effect because he isn't.
Right.
He isn't that way. Like, he's the way that he exists.
Yeah, well, I think, and they did some of this in the 90s miniseries as well, but, really apparent in this movie. There are times when Pennywise is, scaring the kids, kind of preparing them. But you get the feeling that he's really not there. Like he couldn't kill them at that moment.
Maybe,
because
or it's something that only they can see, and they make that apparent even in the book. In the so the miniseries, you had Richie Tozier going to the library or something like that, and Pennywise shows up. He's like, "You're all too old," and like the balloons come down
from the balcony of the library, and the balloons start exploding.
But I think in the book, it's Ben who goes to the library. And it's way more intense. It's I think it's like a dark, death metal version of Dracula with razor blades for teeth.
Yeah.
And Ben knows he's the only one that can see it. No one else in the library can see it. And this thing is coming towards him, and blood's gushing out of its face, and it's all this crazy crap is happening, and he knows that he's the only one that can do it. I don't think he knows if he knows he's in danger or not. But Pennywise does that a lot in the book too.
Right, because it seems like you wonder why didn't Pennywise just take them if they were such a threat.
Yeah.
And I think the reasoning, I think you tapped onto something is he's maybe there in a vision, but not so much there physically because otherwise if these kids were so dangerous to him, he would have probably just taken them out one by one.
But that's the thing too is and they kind of hit on this more. They hit on it too in the miniseries, but they hit on it too in this is Pennywise. They make a much more point in the book. The Pennywise. Sometimes he won't even do the deed himself. What essentially he'll do is he'll manipulate people to do it for him. That's kind of what I was annoyed about in this one too, is that Bowers doesn't chase them down like he did in the miniseries with his gang of idiots, because you see the gang of idiots, and I'm like, good, we're going to see them go down, and then Bowers just falls down a pit, And I hated that because in the miniseries they made it more of a point. Not only that the fact is that even though Bowers is a threat, they make it a point in the book and the miniseries that, like, yes, Bowers is a threat. He's the bully that's tortured them all, but he's nothing compared to the real issue that is Pennywise.
Right.
And so even by comparison, this knife-wielding psychopath is nothing to what it can do to them.
Yeah, so
you know?
It was an interesting choice that they made to, and we don't know if he's dead or not.
No, so like you said, like incorporating flashbacks, my theory and what a lot of people said to me coming out is, I bet you $100 the opening scene of the next movie
is talking to Bowers.
Well, Bowers will probably be going, like, be flushed out, out of the sewers, and all of the bodies will be going with him,
right,
and he'll
get accused of it.
Yeah, because they need to bring him back because he needs to be the older version that comes
right.
and chases them
and
down.
You kind of negated him having to chase the kids down into the sewers.
That's the
by
idea.
Having Bev be taken. And that gave them the impetus to go down into the sewers.
Well,
so it looked like they were trying to kind of save some time. Because the running time here was 2 hours and 15 minutes as it was.
Honestly, and this is how I am, because I don't mind long movies, honestly. As long as the pacing is good, I don't care. But I hope Warner Brothers just lets movies be a certain length or, like, longer than they, because honestly, unless it's Chris Nolan, I know that they could probably get shortened on time. There was nothing about the Battle of Chud. Or at least hinting at it. I would have loved to have seen them as kids, because even the director talked about it. He's like, "Oh, we were going to have a sequence with them being, doing the vision that they did in the book,
right?
Where they see it and they learn about, like, they have to face him on, like, kind of like a mind level, but they don't know how to utilize it,
Right.
But in the book it's much more simple. Like, the miniseries had the same idea essentially, but in the book it's much more simple because of the back and forth in time. You see them face him as adults and kids at the same time.
At the end of the book.
Yeah.
So they had to do something here because they're making a part 2 and they didn't want to give the spoilers away.
From what I've heard, I have a buddy that, my buddy Dan. He knows a buddy that does the movie, and I know the guy. But from what I know, they wanted to treat it as a standalone. So, if worst case scenario, if it bombed,
it can stand on its own.
Yeah, you can still watch it as one movie. So.
But I did hear, or I actually read last night. This was coming from the director and the producer who are married.
Yeah.
That there is an extended director's cut coming to DVD.
Oh, okay, good.
With an additional 15 minutes of material.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Okay, I was wondering if they were going to do that or not.
And his hope was that there was going to be this great scene with Stan and one of the visions that he had. So looks like they're going to try to put that.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, I kind of figured maybe they weren't concentrating as much on Stan because we know what obviously happens to Stan later on down the road. I won't necessarily spoil that, but I might bring it up later. But then again, I got to get more out of this way because I got to get into the nitpicks because this is the real issues I had. Overall, the overall pacing of the movie was good. Like, it was done well. The horror elements were fun. Someone critiqued this, and I do kind of agree. They need to do it when they have a big horror, big thing coming at you. They got to do something about the music where it's not like, like you don't need to ramp up the sound to let me know that this killer clown is a big danger. I know he's a danger. You don't need. It's more scary when there's not as much sound when he's coming and it's just him.
Well, I watched the Babadook last night. Have you ever seen that?
I did like a while ago. I think I might have seen it. Like at Halloween,
about just that kind of subtle, quiet, and it's terrifying. You're right.
Yeah, it's more terrifying because of that.
Those, but big movies, they want to utilize.
They have to do it. Yeah, like that's some studio executive telling them, "Oh, well, you have to have a big thing every 5 minutes rather than just." Because I've even heard that the guy, I guess the guy around True Detective was going to do the movie originally.
Right.
Now, granted, I had a buddy tell me that apparently he did want to do the controversial scene. If you know about it in the book about the kid, essentially, if you don't know about this already, but essentially in the book, the kids get lost after they defeat Pennywise, and they don't know how to get out of the sewers because
and they also feel like they're starting to lose the connection that they're
because there is essentially they were brought together by you find it in the book they were essentially brought together to defeat Pennywise. That was their sole purpose, other than just being friends. But that's why they were brought together.
So if you've seen the movie and not read the book, there's actually a reason why turtles pop up all over the place.
Oh yeah, but no, that's reference to the big turtle who's. Essentially, from what I've heard, is essentially sort of dumb, but he expels our universe like by accident.
Right, he got sick and he threw up, and there was our universe.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Yeah, he's the counterforce to Pennywise, to it.
Yeah. But okay, anyway, yeah, I know. If you don't, we're gonna get off tangent here a little bit, but So hold on.
You're talking about the scene with the kids.
Yeah. So they lose connection. And then Bev essentially prophesizes to them, like, if you guys all have sex with me, essentially, we'll have a connection again for a brief time that will allow us to remember how we got here in the sewers to get out again, because it's a labyrinth down there when they go to find it. And it might even be it manipulating. It's hard to theorize, but
yeah.
And it's an awkward scene.
But from now I'm going to be the English teacher here.
No, that's fine.
So this represents the end of innocence.
Yeah.
So this is where they stop being kids, and this is where we move on to the
being adults,
side of the story. So
the problem is, though, too, even though, like, I remember reading the scene 10 years ago and, like, just being really, like, I wasn't even disgusted so much as just, like, put off, like, why is this happening? Because you have to remember, too, granted, they're a little bit older in I think the new movie. I think the miniseries got a little closer. They're more like 10 or 11 when this is happening.
They're 11 in the book.
Yeah,
they're 11.
They're all 11. Yeah, so they're 11 years old. Like, that's like maybe 13. Maybe that would have made more sense. But again, like, it's just
right,
awkward.
It's kind of that weird age.
Yeah.
But then again, written in the 80s, so the 80s was a weird time.
And I don't know if he was. I think he was just getting off cocaine. I don't know if he wrote it when he was on cocaine.
He might have still been doing cocaine at the time.
Yeah, like people made that joke too.
But symbolically, he was writing about the loss of innocence or the end of childhood.
Yeah. Granted.
Yeah.
That being said, it kind of works in the book if you're because by the time you're reading it, it's the end of the book. You understand like how psychological the villain and the town itself is, let alone their relationship. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But you couldn't do that. You couldn't do that theatrically.
And it almost seemed like they were setting it up because there was this whole subplot of how in the movie everyone was calling Bev a slut and that said that she had slept with Henry Bowers and
there's a lot of stuff.
Then the reveal was that she was none of these things.
Well, there's a thing too. I think even in the book, there's an undermining theme that her being a friend to them, being the only girl. There's this sexual awakening in all of the boys because they're at the age where they're starting puberty.
Right.
And so Bev is
they definitely played that up in the movie.
Oh, they do.
Great scene where they're all kind of.
Well, yeah, they're going in. They're like going into the lake or something.
Yeah, they're down in the Barrens and she's sunbathing in her brown underwear and.
Yeah, they're all staring and they don't know what to do.
Quick look away.
Yeah. So I mean, I like how it's done in the movie, though. And I still don't think that there's a way that you could have made that scene work.
It's not necessary. It's what they did with the, and they still included the cutting their hands and joints
that makes more sense. Right. The blood oath and stuff. On top of that, too, there's the idea of, I would have liked to have seen the idea of that guy originally doing it because from what I can tell, he probably wanted to do something much more psychological, closer to the book, whereas this is more. Just like he's scaring, and the kids are essentially it's Goonies if it was a horror movie,
sure.
which is fine. I get it because they updated it. Stephen King doesn't even care about the dates. He's like, no, it's more about them being friends and and facing it rather than like the time period. Oh, dude, sorry. Do you want to just get a thing on top of that? No, it's okay. Sorry, got a drink there. But anyway, the idea essentially is that I mean it's definitely dumbed. I would say it's dumbed down a little bit. The movie obviously, it's not as psychological as I would have liked it to have been. But the big pet peeves I have was that I loved the actress playing Bev so much, and I liked what they did with her character a lot in the movie. Where the damsel in distress thing annoyed me because. And again, they play this better in the miniseries. The idea is that they essentially are like, well, we need to figure this out. Once we get that figured out, we're going to go kill Pennywise. And they have to essentially get things together, get like bullets for like, I think they use an actual gun in the book. I could be wrong.
In the book, what they did was Bill had a couple of silver dollars.
Okay.
And so they believed that a monster could be defeated
by silver. Yeah.
So they were using the werewolf mythology.
Yeah.
So they melted them down into silver balls. They did the same thing in the 90s miniseries.
They did, but
they all practiced with the slingshot.
So they did use a slingshot, but in the miniseries they cut it down and they made it essentially silver earrings that they had.
Right. But the silver dollars of bills that had been given to him that he melted down.
Yeah.
And so as they were practicing with the slingshot, it just turned out that Bev was actually
see, that's what I'm saying. They could have done that.
Flipped that kind of on its head there and made a strong female character.
Now the damsel in
Right,
distress. I mean, I get it. I get how it works in the story. Like Pennywise knows that she's more or less one of the strongest ones, and he knows that all of them will follow to go find Bev.
Right.
That they're not going to abandon her or whatever, and he wants to trick them and trap them. But I thought that was kind of silly because the whole point is that they're gathering around to take this thing down. It kind of takes away the strength of the group.
Right.
I kind of just
I did have an issue with that.
Yeah.
But again, it kind of looked to me. It seemed like a time crunch.
Yeah, that
Because,
could
again,
be
you
it
don't
too.
have the Bowers gang chasing them down there.
Yeah.
Which I loved from the book and the miniseries. I loved. Nothing to me was scarier in that miniseries than that light coming down the tubes.
Seriously, that was great.
And it's kind of the dynamic that made Jaws work, right?
Yeah.
When you saw the shark, you're like, oh, that's fake. But when you saw those barrels,
yeah,
that was the most terrifying part, right?
What was not seeing it
Right.
half the time.
Yeah,
It was
so-
either the clown or the lights,
Right,
and
so
you're
the
just like, what's
Deadlights
going?
was just a really terrifying part for me.
Yeah.
In the '90s miniseries.
Now,
So-
granted, sorry.
So, they kind of incorporated all that, so they get down in the sewers to get Bev, and now they show the Deadlights because that's how he kind of knocked her out or put her in the
yeah.
the state of catatonia. So, that seemed like they took a lot and tried to crunch it down. So
Yeah, I'm hoping the director's cut actually does something different. I don't know why Warner Brothers has to do this. Like it happened with BVS and they I don't know what they did with Suicide Squad. They messed that up too.
Yeah.
But they just need to like give a little bit more creative freedom. Just like let it happen. Because honestly, it was paced so well. it could have been half an hour longer and it would have been fine. But 2 hours 45 minutes. I
guess it's the turnaround. Like how many showings can they have in a day?
I know.
And that's their bottom line. Because for me, with the price of movies today, if you give me a good 3-hour movie that's well paced and I'm enjoying myself,
yeah,
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
If I'm paying $11, $14, whatever it is,
seriously,
give me 3 hours of entertainment versus 90 minutes.
Yeah.
They dropped the ball big time with Dark Tower. 90 minutes.
I don't even so I didn't see Dark Tower because I was kind of hesitant on the trailers. I mean, I liked Matthew McConaughey, I liked Idris Elba, but I hadn't read the book, so I wasn't as involved. And then I heard the movie was just terrible.
I wouldn't say terrible, but it could have been much better.
Were they trying to condense one book into a thing? Was they trying to condense several? What happened?
So it was almost like they pulled from all the books, but it was its own story.
Oh.
So things that came later were still incorporated. The gunslinger chasing the man in black is from the first book.
Okay.
Then, and meeting Jake and all that. So there were elements, that was mostly made up of the first book, but you saw elements from the other books pop up.
Okay.
So, but it was kind of its own story. It really wasn't. They didn't try to sum all 7 books or 8 books, whatever there are, into one movie, but they rather tried to pull bits and pieces.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing about Dark Tower, I've already heard that they had an idea for the TV series, and since the movie essentially bombed,
yeah.
they're like, okay, let's do the miniseries instead. That'll be a lot
I hear
easier.
that the miniseries is supposed to be actually along the lines of Wizards and Glass, which was a flashback novel, anyways.
Okay. So it's the starting point.
It's Roland when he was a teenager, basically learning to become a gunslinger.
Okay.
So it's kind of his story of coming up. So I think that's the direction they want to go with the miniseries.
That's fine as long as it's true. You don't have to make everything true to Stephen King because sometimes, I've read enough of his stuff to know that sometimes he can be amazing, and other times you're like, I don't know what's going on, but he just writes so much,
right?
That it can. I mean, even it, as much as I love that book, a lot of it is just it's just kind of filler. But you're just finding out more and more about what's happening.
Because he does create this whole universe that revolves around Castle Rock and Derry.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff you get backstory. You get whole chapters of backstory about and
this minimal character that you don't know much else about.
One thing I think they did really well in this current movie, and one of the most chilling things from the book to me was not the clown, but the fact that all this stuff was happening and the adults kind of turned a blind eye to it.
Yeah, so this is the thing too, because in the miniseries, they make a point of the adults being as submissive about it, but they don't make it a point about it being Pennywise. It just sort of is. And I remember even when I showed the movie to my mom, she was like, "Why are the adults such horrible people?
Yeah.
What's happened?" I'm like, "Mom, it's not them. It's the clown." And she didn't understand. She was like, "Why don't they help these poor kids?"
Yeah. So I think it was one thing that this movie did really well.
Is they made it a point.
Right.
I wish they could have done my one pick with that is as well as they did that when Bev is facing her dad.
Yeah.
I wish they had shown the Pennywise like influence, because when he faces her in the book, she's looking up at her dad, but she's not seeing her dad. She sees like Pennywise in his eyes.
Right.
She can see that same look. She's like, Pennywise is in there. He basically just got into like an empty tool shed and just using the tools essentially.
Right.
You know,
yeah, that would have been a nice touch. But they did a really great thing where Ben was getting carved up by.
Oh no,
Henry,
that was perfect from the
those
books.
People looked and kept driving, and then you see the balloon in their back seat. So
that was enough where you got it.
Right.
You know, there's like I said, like that. I wanted more of that, but like the whole point too is when Bowers is facing them down there, like he's only really there because Pennywise again is just manipulating what's in there.
Right.
He's like, oh, you hate this kid, and like he's not like, hey, kill him for me yet, but he's just like, here's a knife, you know. So it's like all that build up and the knife and everything, and then down the thing, and it's like, all right, cool,
Right.
thanks.
Right.
Again, the other thing that really bothered me. And again, as much as I'm shitting on the movie, I still really liked it. But another thing that I had issue with was Mike Hanlon, because they essentially like Mike is one of the most important characters in the whole book.
I think we're going to see more Mike in
part
2.
We are.
That's where I think you may see more of Mike the kid though in the flashbacks.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
But the thing is too is that they gave off his role to Ben. And it's like, you don't need to do that. Ben is the new kid, yes, but his whole point is the love triangle between him and Bev and Bill. That's
Right.
the idea. And other than that, like Mike has a past, you can see that, but he's just essentially now the token black kid. And it's like
he was the historian before, and he's the one that
yeah.
brought those books, and that's where they discovered
much more
these pictures. Yeah,
yeah.
They did a really nice job with that in the 1990 miniseries.
It was perfect.
Right.
I mean, as far as again, there's still a lot that they subverted, but you got that Mike was an important person.
Right.
Like he's like, oh, I have to make a call after he sees another kid murdered. And then you find out the whole backstory.
Right.
And, like, every kid, like, hey, you gotta come back. And I'm just like, why are they not making him the historian? Because he's the one that has to call them back in.
Right.
They'll probably make some joke in the second one where they'll be like, well, I was the historian, but I passed it on to you, I guess, Hank. Or Mike Hanlon. And I'll be like, fuck you, movie. But, you know, I mean, it's still fine. Like, Ben is still a cool character. Like, I just wish that Mike had been given more to do. Because he essentially is just sort of there, and the whole cattle prod thing, which wasn't in the book, but essentially is just that, and it's like...
Oh, so yeah, that's what they were using down in when we were talking about the sun. So that's what they were using this one. But let's talk about the kids for a second.
Yeah, I mean, the kid actors are great.
Well,
so
they were great, but, you know, there were many times where I was longing for the 90s script with those kids with today's special effects.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was because the book and the 90s miniseries go back and forth between adults and kids.
Yeah.
That I felt more connected to those characters, but I struggled connecting to a lot of those kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said. There's times where there's one or few focuses on them, and they're fun, and I want them to live. I don't want them to die. So the movie succeeds in that level, but I don't feel as closely connected to them as I did in the kids in the miniseries.
Right.
You know, again. It's more also of like I think also it is partly generational because the kids in the movie the miniseries are in the 60s and these are much more 80s modern kids. So, you know, it's a much different dynamic. So it's like, okay, I get that it's, you know, you get it right away that the guy is a fan of the 80s movies. You have Gremlins on the poster in the wall on Bill's bedroom and stuff like that. You get, you know, so it's like, yes, this is an 80s movie, essentially.
Yeah.
But
and another thing that just kind of drove me crazy, and it might sound kind of prudish, but having the kids swear every other word.
That didn't bother me.
It bothered me because, you know, and look, I work with high school kids. I know what their mouths are like.
Yeah.
But it seemed unnecessary and gratuitous to me.
Well, the thing is, too, like, I would be more bothered by it if I hadn't read the book, and they're much more foul-mouthed in the book.
Yeah.
They really are. Even for kids in the 1950s,
right.
They're foul-mouthed. And that's fine with me because, like, South Park made the same exact argument, you know, like when everyone's like, well, why are the little kids foul-mouthed? It's like, kids are like that. Like, they actually talk like that. Like, that's how kids are because they're learning new words or they're trying to be... Now, granted, they're much older than the South Park kids, but that didn't bother me because, like, even... I don't know if you remember, but the scene where Eddie in the miniseries where he's like, "This is battery acid, you slime."
Yeah.
In the book, this is battery acid, fuck nuts.
Well,
like, you know, like that's...
You know, that would have had more of an effect if that came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Like if a kid said that, I think that would have been more powerful then if they were saying those words every 2 seconds, it just kind of loses.
I mean, there's obviously Stand By Me influence in there, and
Yeah.
you've seen Stand By Me.
Right.
They cuss all the time.
Oh yeah.
So
But it felt different in Stand By Me than in this one.
yeah,
It just seemed, in some respects that like, hey, we got in our movie, let's swear.
yeah.
And, it just didn't seem necessary.
Well, the funniest thing that I found about, as far as like, especially in the F word, is like Richie Tozer is one of the biggest accusers, and I find it hilarious with Richie because you hear beep beep Richie once, and it's from Pennywise,
Right.
and it's ironic because Richie is like genuinely funny in the movie, but the joke with them as kids was that he wasn't funny.
Right.
Like that's why they say beep beep Richie, because we're like, it was their kind way of saying, dude, shut the fuck up. We
Right.
don't want to hear your dumb impressions.
This takes me back to the language.
Yeah.
The reason that beep beep doesn't exist in the movie is because beep beep is something that kids that don't swear would say.
Yeah.
And so because they're foul mouthed as they are, beep beep wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
And so I think that was thrown in as a tip of the cap to the book.
Yeah.
But it was like, that you haven't used that the entire time. Why is Pennywise saying that now? It doesn't make sense.
I know, it's just fan service at that point. Yeah.
I think that's why the profanity just kind of struck me, because it took away from them being able to do the beep beep and make that a thing.
Yeah.
And if it comes in chapter 2 where they're saying to adult Richie beep beep, that's not going to make any sense because they never used it as kids. So
yeah. I don't know. I mean, so like obviously, I hope one of the biggest issues that I had again was I hope they go more psychological. Now, granted, it's hard to explain, and again, this is an ongoing trend of Stephen King and even the 90s miniseries that translates his books. Is it comes out terrible, but it makes more sense when you read it in the book. Like the whole thing about him using the like Eddie using the inhaler
Right.
and using battery acid, that makes more sense because it actually happens in the book. But it's this whole thing because you find out in the book that like it's what they want to believe as children because of how young they are. They can manipulate things to hurt him more psychologically
Right.
than they could if they shot him with a machine gun.
And again, this is why the kids are more a danger to it. The adults are easy to manipulate because
Yeah.
they don't believe.
They don't
anymore.
believe anymore.
But
They don't
because
believe
kids
in these.
believe, and that's why the silver works.
Yeah.
That's why and there's a
Mhm.
quote in the book and in the 90s miniseries
Yeah.
where someone uses Eddie's spray and they say, "Oh, that tastes like battery acid," and that implants the thought in
idea
his head.
and the
And
belief.
that's why he says this is battery acid. And by Eddie believing it's battery acid, to it becomes battery acid.
And they do the same thing because they heard. I think when he turns into like a werewolf in the house or something in both the movie, but in the book he's chasing I think like Richie and Bill, and Richie hurts him with like fucking sneezing powder because he believes it's something else.
Right.
And it's weird because it's about love and about like good memories and about using what their beliefs are, but that's so hard to translate into a movie.
Oh,
even
of course.
in the miniseries, it kind of doesn't make as much sense. Whereas the new movie, they're just beating the shit out of them with like bats and everything else, and I'm just like the book version would just laugh this off, you know.
Right.
Granted, it works for the film, but yeah, I can't help they're feeling like a bit of a dumbed down aspect. So again, all those nitpicks aside, though,
Yeah. So there were some awesome
movie-
things in
Yeah,
there that
the movie
weren't in the miniseries that I loved. And the first was Niebald Street. I loved the house. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, well, they do use the house, but they only do it one time, and it's when Stan is using like the bird book
Right.
and stuff.
And it doesn't look anything like this house. This
Yeah.
house was great.
Yeah,
And it was fantastic that they used that. And then something that I don't remember it happening in the book. So if you remember it, correct me. But when they're in the garage and the thing starts to turn, giant Pennywise, I thought was terrifying.
Oh yeah, no. So here's the thing. That's not in the that's an updated version of essentially what happens in the miniseries, but it was the photo album. That was directly out of the book. That they translated
that quick flash of light and then giant Pennywise filling the entire garage.
That was terrifying. Yeah.
It was, and
Well-
I just thought that was a great little added touch.
Well, so for me, like watching the scene, I was like, this is a good scene, but I wish they would have done the photo album because that I thought that worked in the miniseries. You could easily translate that to be like a new thing. You don't have to have him like do like the same threatening thing. You could do a few differences here.
Right.
So when it was a slideshow, I was like, But then that scare at the end, I was like, okay, that makes more sense. Or at least this version of it, like, okay, like I get it,
Right.
you know?
Something I did love from the 90s miniseries was when that picture came to life. And
that was
you
so.
see
That was.
Pennywise doing the backflips up to.
That's so much more creepy and distilling. But like that's not. That's unfortunately that's not a lot of modern horror now. Now it has to be in your face,
Right.
which works somewhat with Pennywise. You can do it and it still works. But again, two different approaches to the same essential
Right.
scene, and both kind of work, but in different ways. So that's kind of essentially how the new adaptation is. But granted, this still is a lot closer to the book in many ways, just because they're able to do the R rating and do things, you know, a certain way. But I just wish they hadn't done, because yes, the miniseries is fun, but they definitely figured out right away, like, okay, we're doing all this certain stuff with the kids and stuff, like, we're limited on effects. Let's make it more about the character
Right.
and try to keep some things close. And it works a lot of the time. It works really well. It's only when they're adults in the miniseries that the thing starts to fall off a bit, and it's not as well
Sure.
not as well
You know,
conceived.
you can trace that back to a lot of movies, because those of us that love, you know, the original trilogy of Star Wars was based on the characters because of the way that the effects were.
Yeah.
When George got to play with the effects, you know, in the prequels.
Yeah, the effects are overdone,
Right.
and the characters
And so
were
now
small.
the new movies, we're getting back to character, but you've got that nice
Well,
blend of effects.
it's sort of the middle ground,
Right.
you know. Like I mean, granted, I think Episode 8 will go much more, you know, into character, whereas like 7 needed to be like the soft reboot and get
Right,
people get not only us who have been hardcore fans, but the newer generations into Star Wars. Like, well, Dad, why do you love these old space movies?
Right.
This is why,
Right.
because this is what I experienced when I was a kid.
And the same was with the original Star Wars. You know, it had to get people lured in, and then Empire, by far, was a superior movie.
Oh yeah.
But, you know, everybody's heart is still with, you know, A New Hope, because that's the first one you saw.
Yeah, well, I still think New Hope and Empire are both masterpieces in their own way.
Of
Yeah.
course, yeah. But,
All right,
I mean,
let's not.
Yeah,
I don't get super into
we're
Star
not
Wars.
gonna go off to Star Wars.
Okay, sorry. No,
This is
because
Nerd Supernova. We can go all over the place, right?
so I think we got over most of like the positives and the negatives, but essentially, I still recommend the movie overall, because I think hopefully they're obviously gonna get a higher budget in the second one, because this strangely, I thought this was like maybe like $100 million movie because of the effects and just like the scope of it, but it was only, apparently the budget was only like $35 million.
Is that really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So they've already made back their budget and
Yeah.
some. So they're more than good on that.
Well,
but
they did a great job with the effects then, because
yeah.
you know, again, one of the effects at the end, I don't want to spoil it, but that, you know, the problem with the 90s miniseries, of course, is the spider at the end.
Well, yeah.
And,
Well, they're obviously going to save. They're going to save that to some degree, but I think, you know, like, I mean, they're playing it essentially just like the miniseries,
Yeah.
like because you don't see the spider, you see ideas of what it could be,
Right.
but he's
those
still the clown.
arachnid limbs were very well done.
Yeah.
You know, so
And I mean, I didn't mind the spider, because even as a kid I knew it was a 1990 miniseries TV movie. I
Sure.
knew it wasn't like for film, so it didn't bother me as much. But still, like a ridiculous effect.
yeah, and it doesn't hold up well at all. You know,
No, but the problem is that the spider isn't interactive with them. The spider is just a prop. It's
Yeah.
a thing. Whereas I feel with, obviously, you know, I can see them doing something where Pennywise has like a Pennywise face and a spider
Right,
body,
yeah, the,
or something looking.
technology is going to allow them to.
Yeah.
To
Well,
really,
they're probably gonna do like, remember how like Beetlejuice does like the snake?
yes.
They're probably gonna do something like on level of that, but like have it be like a spider body
Right,
essentially.
yeah.
That's
Well,
what I
because
see
then
them
you can
doing.
Still have the monster talking and taunting them.
Exactly,
While, you know,
and he does even
Right.
in the book, or he says to them like, "This is only as far as your brain will comprehend what
Right.
I really am."
Right,
You
right.
know, like this is as far as it goes before you go insane.
The most terrifying thing you could think of. This is what you can see.
Yeah. Well, because that's why a lot of them go crazy with that. That's why Henry goes crazy, because when he sees the deadlights, because
Right.
he's seeing something beyond what he knows to be or comprehend.
Right. It's looking out into the macroverse, and it's just
Yeah.
beyond human comprehension.
So I mean, obviously they're hinting. They did a good enough job, I felt, hinting at like the future movie, but there's so much more that I think they could have done. Hopefully, so tell me more about this director's cut. What did he actually say?
All I really read was that there's going to be an additional 15 minutes added.
Okay.
And, it's not for sure what material, because apparently there's much more than 15 minutes. Because the director was talking like, I hope they let us add this, or you know.
Oh, wow,
So
okay.
it's not even decided yet. I guess what's going to make the movie, you know, seem like it was one continuous original movie rather than, you know, interjecting things that they had left out. So,
Yeah,
you know,
I just
those decisions will have to be made. But
like, hey, here's studio exec. Like, hey, we're having trouble getting people to go into a theater. But hey, we'll give you your turn to do your version of your movie. Meanwhile, people at home are like, why am I going to pay to see the movie now when I can just wait and I get his version that I want to see later?
Yeah,
like, what's the point?
It's one of those films that you
I know.
see it in the
They wanted asses in seats, not just Stephen King fans, not just fans of Terrifying Clowns. They wanted to get everybody in.
Right, and and it's hard to please everybody.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're lucky to have the source of the book, to have the '90s miniseries in this, and all your favorite parts you can catch somewhere.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. It's a very good movie. I highly recommend it.
Even the miniseries I think is still holding up decently.
I enjoy the miniseries.
Yeah, it's fun.
But I grew up with it, so
yeah. Again, that nostalgia factor.
The nostalgia factor. I like what they did with this movie.
No,
there's things in it that I like that they have that the miniseries didn't have,
and vice versa.
So it's nice to have both of them out there that you can experience it. But yeah, I think a lot of this was to draw in a wider fan base rather than hardcore fans of the book.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be some disappointment with that. The people would be like, "Geez, I wish they had this part, or I wish they had that part."
If anything, if the director's cut is superior, they'll probably do it on the same level like they did for like Lord of the Rings, because they still have available theatrical versions. Because I've only seen the theatrical versions of those Lord of the Rings, and I love those movies.
Right.
But I've heard that the Peter Jackson's extended cuts of Lord of the Rings are superior. Like they are better, and so they're widely available. As long as you make it available, fine.
And I mean, I think it, as it is now.
It's still pretty solid.
Yeah, different situation with Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
Where you see the extended cut, you're like, oh, now that makes sense.
Yes.
It's a superior movie because of the stuff that's added in. Whereas it is going to stand alone, but
it's still solid.
15 minutes is going to be pretty cool.
To
see some extra stuff because for me, I can't wait for Chapter 2.
Yeah, same.
I'm thinking I'm going to go back and see this one again. I just really enjoyed it, and I'd love to see it with some additional material.
Yeah. So I think it'll be cool. But yeah, final note. Best thing I can again praise is that it was a well-paced movie. The kid actors for the most part are pretty good, even though I think they could have been utilized better, or the characters I think could have been done a little better. But overall, they're still fun to watch. Like I care about them. I don't want them to die. I'm not waiting for Pennywise, even though I know the book. But I wasn't rooting for Pennywise. So the horror movie did well on that front. And Bill Skarsgård does a really good job as Pennywise. Honestly, I was on the fence. I wasn't all the way hating it, but they showed pictures and I was just kind of okay, I can kind of see this is kind of closer to the book in some aspects, but there's some stuff that they started only releasing about a month before that was way close. And I was like, oh, if they showed him picture of this version, him smiling more, this is what I pictured more in my head of the actual character.
It worked.
Yeah.
He did a fantastic job.
Yeah, there's definitely I added stuff too, like the idea of I definitely don't think it was in the book, but the kids show that everyone's watching on TV, like the woman who, and if you hear her earlier in the movie, she says, you should go in the sewers and play with your friends, and I was like, that's Pennywise, and then later, I'd already had it spoiled for me because of the some of the trailers, and then later, Henry's looking at the show, and there's Pennywise in the crowd going kill them all, kill them all, and I was like, okay, man, you got me, But I like it too because you can definitely tell that the guy was heavily influenced by Nightmare on Elm Street. Even at the marquee at the theater, you see Nightmare on Elm Street 5.
Right, it was Nightmare on Elm Street 5.
Yeah.
It was funny too because I was a teenager at that time, so I was thinking in my head as soon as I saw that, all right, where did I see Nightmare on Elm Street 5? What theater? And it took me back. I was I felt like I was back in the 80s. So they really recreated the 80s pretty well.
Yeah, and they definitely know that people think about Joker as well because Batman '89 is on the marquee at the summer of '89, and I'm like, well, it was the big movie too. So, but it was good. So, yeah. And anyway, I still recommend seeing the film if you're a fan of the stuff from before. I mean, it's definitely at least worth checking out in the theater with friends and having fun and being scared to some extent, if not laughing at some parts, because some of them are kind of funny. Because again, he is sort of a clown still, so some of it does come off kind of funny.
Oh right,
it's
absolutely.
Weird.
Yeah, he does play up that clown, and I did hear some interesting theories on his suit, and because he's been around in Derry so long, that's the kind of outfits that clowns back then would wear. Yeah, and that's why it's that
he's more
kind of different material.
They make that a point too because that actually is what he actually more or less looks like in the book. He's not all colorful as he is, so that when I remembered that, I was like, okay, that is closer to the book actually. So again, like I said, there's different variations of it. But the fact that like Pennywise looks like a modern clown, that's almost more disturbing too. There's so many different differences in like the approach and stuff. But I like both approaches. Trying to think of any other final thoughts I had on this. I mean, any final thoughts on you as far as the movie goes?
Yeah, I mean, I was really impressed with how they were able to take this material, and I was again thrilled that it was 2 hours and 15 minutes. We got
It was
a
long,
lot
yeah.
of stuff in there. You know, a lot of stuff was hinted at. The whole Patrick Hostetler thing, you know, it was nice to see him appear in the movie, even though they didn't go into
more like his
backstory.
because he's nuts. He's even
just
crazier.
as bad as Bowers.
So
you know, if you're a fan of the book, keep your eyes open. There's lots of little
Easter eggs,
throughout, and little, you know, tip of the cap to the book that we're probably not going to get a chance to see even in chapter 2. But it's nice to know that they even recognized them. So, you know, I thought they were pretty true to the, you know, the adaptation, while keeping it still, you know, appealing for, you know, old and new audience coming in to see this. So, if you haven't seen it yet, what's wrong with you? Go see it. Right.
No, but definitely, no, I mean, I definitely recommend it. This movie would probably give me nightmares if I had been like a kid, for sure.
Yeah.
Not now so much, not as much, but it definitely still creeped me out and scared me a little bit. So I'm like, okay, and that's more than some horror movies do these days. But I wish it had been more. Only a little bit more psychological, a little bit more subtle sometimes, because sometimes the subtle stuff works best. Even in the miniseries, you can see that a lot of the time. The subtlety was good.
Right.
But, you know, it is what it is, and it's still a solid film.
And it's still a thing filmmakers are working out because they have so much technology at their fingertips.
Yeah,
they
now
sometimes
especially.
Forget good filmmaking and subtlety and, you know, building the terror, and less is more.
Less is more, yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Well, anyway, looking forward to chapter 2. Hope that they can definitely get more psychological. They can give more back to Mike Hanlon and you know, and the rest of the cast. And hopefully, I'm interested to see who they're going to cast for the
adult actors.
I think they've heard Jessica Chastain for adult Bev. I think personally, Amy Adams looks closer to that actress, and she can do just as good a job. So,
yeah, but they're both excellent. So,
both very excellent. Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be interesting to see who they do cast for those characters, and
for sure,
you know, hopefully the kids don't grow up too much for the flashbacks. So.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I'm hoping that I think at this point they should greenlight it, because I think they're probably waiting until the end of the month, and then they want to see how it plays in October, and then they might greenlight it. And once they greenlight it, they'll probably just go immediately start filming before the kids grow up too much. I don't know if they'll flashback necessarily to the time of the movie, but possibly stuff in between.
Right. There'll definitely be, you know, in between scenes that the adults are thinking of, you know, other scenes.
Thinking like, this is what I did after Derry. Because you get hints of that in the book of, like, what happened to them after they split up from Pennywise, and, like, what happened to them, like, in between and stuff.
Right.
And what I hope they definitely capitalize on, though, as far as them being adults, is one of the cooler aspects I liked about it. They referenced it in the miniseries, but all of them are successful. Like...
Yes. Well, he actually makes mention of that.
Oh, yeah.
He says, you know, you can leave, was it Bill? Leave Bill with me? And you can go on and you'll all be successful if you just leave him with me.
Oh, yeah.
And so
that's right. Pennywise bargains with them in the book.
Right.
He's like, give me Bill, I'll kill him, and all of you will be rich beyond your wildest dreams.
So the 90s just had them all successful. The books had them all successful.
Yeah.
But yeah, in this movie, they, you know, that was there. He said, you know, if you just leave him with me, just turn around and walk away. You'll all leave.
Does he do that in the movie?
He does, yeah.
I didn't remember him doing that.
Yeah, he did. He once they were down in the sewer.
Wait, miniseries or the new movie?
The current movie.
All right, I'm gonna have to watch it again. There's definitely some stuff I missed.
He bargained with them. He told them, because as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, that's how they got successful. He's making the bargain, but he ended up being successful anyways without him. But he was.
But even in the book, I remember like either Mike or Bill or somebody was like, listen. Like, I'm a librarian, but it's because I stayed here in Derry. But all of you are strangely successful. And it's to the point of like I think Eddie has like a successful limo business. And he's like, dude, limo businesses go under all the time. How is it you've managed as well as you have? And he's like, I don't know. And he's like, exactly.
The strange thing, and what the book really pointed out, was they were enormously successful, but all childless.
Yeah,
so
I forgot about that. They're all none of them are like impotent, but none of them have children.
They're all they don't have children. So.
Yeah, I think even it's mentioned later, or it's either this miniseries or it's the book. I can't remember, but I think Bev gets pregnant after like Ben and her
I don't
like hook up or something.
Mentioned. It might be in the book because it wasn't in the miniseries. Yeah, but until they defeat it, they were wildly successful, but all childless.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Its influence because their kids probably could have theoretically come back and killed the monster. So,
maybe if they are powerful enough, or if they knew about
those kids were powerful. Now they're second generation. They might even have more power if they were all to come together. So.
That's very true. I never even thought about that. I definitely forgot about the whole like none of them having kids and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hoping they at least touch on those aspects in the second one. I feel now, hopefully, maybe if the director is like, okay, look, I did it your way. Like, I thank you for letting me have my version, but like I have more money now. Please let me make it a little bit longer, or let me do this and that. And he said something though about wanting to make Mike Hanlon, a druggie, like a librarian, but a druggie, because he wants him to have like the visions, essentially, like kind of like because he wasn't able to do Battle of Chud so much, or
right.
But that's how that's how he wants him to find out about the Battle of Chud, because he's getting visions through drugs and everything. And I was like, have him just find a book.
Yeah, right.
You don't need him to have visions. Like, have him find a book. I don't think he was a junkie in the book.
No, he wasn't.
No, okay, yeah,
and,
all right.
So, yeah, I mean, they did keep out a lot of the mystical element, right? Because you don't get into the turtle and all that. So that whole macroverse. So I don't think you need to go all mystical.
Well, no, but I'm saying like if you're gonna expand the sequel, go out a little bit more, because obviously first film you can't do it all the way. You don't want to scare too many people off. You want to just like simple stuff like killer clown has somehow been able to live as long as he has and all this crazy shit. Like have the kids beat the shit out of him. Like okay, I get that. But go into why now,
right?
And now they're figuring out more and more. Like, okay, he's not of this earth. That's how.
I mean, this could make up for the fact that Mike didn't have the book in this movie. So
again,
find something.
Again, like I'm just saying, like you don't have to do the druggy angle. Like have him just be smart. Do that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, he's a librarian.
He's got a library. He's got a lot of time on his hands.
He remembers everything because he stayed in town. So
exactly,
he would know what to look for.
Yeah, I love that they always played in both the book and even after they defeat it, like the whole Neverland aspect, because they don't forget about each other, but they don't ponder about it until Mike calls them back, and then they snap into it again because they know they have to go back, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, I hope they really play on that a lot more. But yeah, I'm sorry, we're kind of going on and on here, but I'm trying to think if there's any other closing statements I wanted to make. Yeah, again, I just hope that they're allowed to do more, get a little bit closer to the book, more psychologically anyway. Like have a little bit more room to be, because it's the last one. They're going to make the movie anyway now. Essentially, once it gets greenlit, they're going to, especially after the box office take, they're going to do fine. So let them have a little bit more experimentation, or at least a little bit.
You're going to crush it opening weekend regardless.
Yeah, people are already more than excited to see the second chapter. So go a little bit more into the book. Like go a little bit more psychological if you want. That's all I really ask, you know, and get that point across. All right, we're talking almost an hour here. I think we're good.
We covered it pretty extensively, I think.
All right, and again, any final thoughts, or is that it?
No, I just want to thank you for having me down.
No problem, man.
Coming down and doing the podcast.
Yeah, I know for a long time, but we always get
schedules and all that. But so I'm thrilled to actually get a chance to come down here and sit around and talk the movie with you. So thanks for having me down.
No problem, man. No problem. And any time in the future, feel free. Just let me know ahead of time. It should be good.
Excellent.
All right.
All right. Cool.
Sounds good. Okay, guys. Have a good one.